Hello, Annabelle. We're going to take a look at your first two photo postings for the class. So let's start by screen sharing here and get to talking about what we see. So I have your first emphasis sort of all queued up. What I like to do is take a look and see that you are, first of all, just basically following the parameters, the instructions that were outlined on the project itself. This may sound sort of simple, but a lot of times it's more complicated than that. There are certain things that we're looking for, when we have in this particular case where we have you start off at a distance, any arbitrary distance. It really just depends on how large the building is, but then you start cutting it in half and cutting it in half. Also, whether you're able to correctly label things and put things together and that kind of stuff. So it looks like on the at first glance on the surface that you've got everything organized fairly well. The scenes look all composed in pretty good shape. Lighting wise, they look pretty good. I'll talk a little bit more about the lighting that I'm seeing and talk a little bit more about the amount of time that it takes to make these kinds of images. However, taking a look at the images as we go through, you're doing an excellent job of using the entire picture plane, the entire space here. In fact, you are using the rule of thirds here, whether you knew it or not. You have the tower there, not formally in the rule of thirds, but at least it's not centered directly in the middle of the composition. Also, you have the Victoria clock there. That is pretty close to where the rule of thirds line would be, even though this isn't the rule of thirds. You might be intuitively working on that, whether you knew it or not. So that's a good thing. The quality of light is also really interesting. You've got what's called a mixed quality of light, where you have artificial lighting and natural lighting still happening. The natural lighting and the artificial lighting are almost balanced, so that neither one is sort of taking over. Then you're getting in a little bit closer. This one is a little bit more of a challenge because here you've got this sort of shape that you're working with. Here you're closer, and so it's sort of a little bit more difficult. When I'm seeing these projects, I tend to see where the students are comfortable in terms of composing and in terms of where they would typically be standing, or the kind of distance that they are most comfortable making imagery from. That first image was really tightly composed. This one seems like not sure where you wanted to be. The line work here, we got kind of, it moves this the placement of objects don't seem quite as deliberate as they were before. Here, again, we're looking up pretty straight up at an angle. You're trying to get that, that diagonal, and it is kind of interesting, the interaction that you're getting here through the figure with the arrow, and then it's kind of shooting the arrow backward here, kind of coming back down. I see what you're doing. That's all pretty cool. Here now you're getting into some more symmetry. Did you cut it in half? It looks like you're still following that instruction pretty well. Now, here's what I am thinking about though. So this quality of light, you've done an excellent job in capturing this quality of light. This quality of light, however, lasts about 10-15 minutes. So I can tell that these photographs were taken in about 10 or 15 minutes. And I wouldn't give a project that would only take you 10 or 15 minutes and then offer you an entire week to do it. So that's an observation. What I'm saying here is, if you could do this in 10 and 15 minutes, imagine what you're going to be capable of doing when you invest the real amount of time that you're given to be able to explore and really mine the environment and really look at what it is that you're making imagery of. It's one thing to be able to go and intuitively respond to a scene and be able to act in a very responsive way. It's another to be able to really explore and push beyond our initial ideas and get through all of that. You've made some really interesting images here. They'll never be as good as they could have been if we had spent even more time. A lot of students will struggle to get images that look as nice as these, what you've been able to do in a very quick amount of time. But that doesn't mean that you just want to do them very quickly and then be done with it. You want to take what you're able to do very quickly and still use all of the time that you're given in order to push them even farther, because you're the one it's your barrier that you're trying to break, not somebody else's barrier that you're trying to break. So bear that in mind. When we're offering these projects and you're given from Wednesday all the way to Monday, I'm not saying you have to make photographs every day, but it certainly isn't meant to say, well, go out for 10, 15 minutes and make photographs, and that's going to be the 5 days worth of work. That's certainly not the expectation. So make sure that you're taking full advantage of the time that you're being given. Let's take a look now at your other project, which is going to be the rule of thirds here. Let's see. Annabelle, rule of thirds theme. Right. All right. Oh, I see you. Excuse me. I see you have your black and white setting on. That's cool. And you're switching back and forth a bit from vertical to horizontal. I see also that we've got some shapes that are being reconfigured, the different shapes of your composition. See, this one is one aspect ratio. This one is another aspect ratio. It seems like you're sort of fiddling with the settings on your camera somewhat. That's what would result in one of these being a different shape. You oftentimes have different settings on the camera, 4:3 aspect ratio or 2:3 or 16:9 and that kind of stuff. You want to be cognizant of that, especially when you're trying to shoot a series, so that they're all the same and consistent. So rule of thirds, that's the grid structure that we're kind of working with. Number one, what I'm hoping that you guys are able to do is to quite literally identify what it is. You did a pretty good job on this one, and then you're working through it on this as well, where you're placing some of these horizontal lines as vertical and the horizontal lines in pretty good spots here. They're on incredibly strong emphasis on the verticals. This one really isn't working too strongly on emphasizing the rule of thirds. It's an excellent image, but is it a good example of saying, hey, I know what rule of thirds is. Here, let me show you. That's probably not what I would have suggested. These are kind of interesting images. I would also suggest to avoid using any settings that alter the quality of the photographs while you're making the photographs. This obviously has some sort of like noir setting that's going on inside the camera that you're making, which is punching up the contrast and making it feel more dense. You want to avoid that. I would much rather see how you are exploring the lighting and how you are exploring shape than to see what kind of filters your camera has. Again, this has nothing to do with criticism. These are amazing images. But when we're exploring these kinds of compositional strategies, what we want to do is kind of strip all of that away and then really just get down to the bare bones of how are we arranging objects within the page. And then on top of that, afterward, we start to build some of these other things like filters and that kind of thing. Black and white's totally fine, just to put it on monochromatic or something like that. So if you're looking for that setting rather than like film noir or like harsh black and white or whatever, you can. I'll help you look for that within your camera settings so that we can take it off of the sort of heavy graphic filtration that it seems like you're using here. This one got away from you a little bit. Nighttime photography is going to be something I'm going to discourage students from doing in the class, because it sets up a whole nother series of challenges for everybody. So I would say the time that you did your emphasis, which was the transition, that's about blue hour, where the sun was just about going down, it equals in intensity of the artificial lighting. That was about as dark as I would suggest you do for projects in the class. Otherwise, you're setting up an entirely different kind of set of problems for yourself with the shot. I'm wondering, this is a self-portrait with your hand. I wonder if that's what that is. So I would be more than happy to kind of take a look at what your camera is all about. That way I can help you maybe calibrate some of these settings so that you don't have this fluctuation of all of these different shapes. This one being more square, this one being more tall and rectangle, which is more like 16:9, and so on. So we can be more consistent. And then also to be able to withdraw and take off some of the filtration that you got going on here, so that we can truly see what you're looking at, rather than how the camera is manipulating or altering the scene in whatever way the setting sees best fit. So that's the kind of stuff that I'm observing. I think overall you're doing a very good job in terms of making the images. Spend more time, like I said, even though these may be straightforward and simple to you in terms of concept. I still want you to push yourself and use all of the time available that you have to explore and make images that even surprise yourself. That's going to be the way that we grow. So, all right, I'm looking forward to seeing more of your images, and we'll see you in class. All right, bye-bye now.